Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, or good night, depending on where and what part of the world you are in right now. Welcome to the first edition of the FEZANA Talks series. FEZANA Talks is a new feature that FEZANA is engaging in and hoping to work as a way to really try to bring in the various aspects of our community efforts, of the diverse engagement efforts that are happening, the various issues that our diaspora is working on, and you know, a way to bring about so many of the issues and conversations that needs to happen. And so this will include some talks that will have the youth, some talks that will have the business areas, many community efforts, and so on. And so today we will be launching the first talk, and it's just such a perfect opportunity for us, as it just so happens to be the 1-year anniversary of the 7th World Zoroastrian Youth Congress that we held just a year ago at Los Angeles. And we were, you know, this is something that we want to bring back and talk about, especially because we had so many really, really important conversations there. And so along with my team and the, you know, I see Hanoz over here, I see Rihanna, some of the other folks who helped organize it. We thought about what are some of the highlights that we wanted to bring back from that Congress, some of the conversations that we thought were absolutely crucial and important to our community, and now more than ever before. And by no means have they not only been only more important now, but also still very relevant and something that's worth having. And the first one of these panels is no other than the conversation around climate change, and can Zoroastrianism save climate change? So with that, I'm gonna pass this over to our awesome panel moderator, which is Karl, Senior Advisor of Advancing Net Zero at UK Green Building Council. And Karl, go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Shahan, and hello, everyone. Nice to see you all in your houses, bedrooms, wherever you all are. And thanks for the introduction, Shahan, and the opportunity to present today. As Shahan said, I work for the UK Green Building Council, and essentially what I do is, in my title, buildings contribute about 40% to worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. And my role is trying to understand how the UK can reduce that impact to net zero. I'm originally from Sydney, but I'm now based in London. It's a summer's day, but it's cloudy and it was raining earlier. But hello to you all. I think most of you will be from the US. But now that I've introduced myself, it'll be good to get to know who you all are. We have about 30 of you on the webinar. And we'd like to know, firstly, where you're from, where you're dialing in from, what your profession is, and what you'd like to get out of today's session. That'll help us tailor our presentations. So I'm just going to give you all a few moments now to drop that into the chat box, and we'll see where you're all coming from. I see Arash is really pleased to be here. He's been out of Iran for 10 years and he's really glad to see all these Zoroastrians. Dolly's dialing in from Montreal. Hello, Dolly. Farzad from Houston. Hello, Farzad. We've got a lot of Texans on the line. Oh, we've got someone from London here, Farah Doctor. Hello, Farah. All right, a lot of Americans. We're an American dominated, but that's okay. Hi, Edel, nice to see you again. Afraid from Toronto, nice to see you also. So this is great. Good to see some familiar names and familiar faces. Let me kick things off. So the context that we're in today, so I guess just to provide a bit of background, the panel that you have here today presented at the World Zoroastrian Congress a year ago today, which is fantastic. And we discussed climate change and the role that Zoroastrianism can play in that. Now, the context today is drastically different. As you all know from the past few months, COVID has taken over our lives, and it's affected every part of our lives in big ways and in small. And I really like these two cartoons. One on the left really shows how we've been focusing all our efforts on trying to flatten this curve around COVID. We're mobilizing finance, we're shutting down economies, we're stopping air travel, we're moving heaven and earth to really try and contain the spread of this virus. And in large part, it's been successful. I don't want to comment on the US, but here in the UK and in Australia, we've really clamped down on the virus in a dramatic amount of time. And we've seen drastic changes to humanity that we wouldn't have maybe expected a few months ago. But what's in the not too distant future is the bigger threat, which is climate change. And that's where we need to now focus our efforts. For too long, we have been burying our heads in the sand. We think it's way off in the future. We think it's happening somewhere else in the world, so we pay less attention to it. And that's an interesting parallel to the COVID crisis, where we really have acted extremely fast, and we have really achieved some significant results that we wouldn't have otherwise expected. So what we're here to discuss is two things mainly. The fact that Zoroastrianism is rooted in environmentalism. It's kind of threaded throughout our religion. And some of you on the call may be observing Bum and Maino, which is where we abstain from eating meat. This is a practical example of where we're trying to reduce our environmental impact for at least a month. And what we have on hand today are 4 Planeteers. That's our fantastic panel. These guys are all working on the front line to try and solve climate change in one way or another. So we're going to hear from them. Essentially, how we're structuring today's session is that we're going to have 5 minutes from each speaker to hear about their perspective on climate change amidst the COVID crisis. And then what we want to do is we want to hear a lot of questions from you all. So I really encourage you to use the chat box, throw down any questions you have for the speakers based on what they've presented, and then let's spend half an hour afterwards to have an open discussion about where we can best direct our efforts to tackle climate change. So I'm going to pass over to the speakers, but before I do, I've given them a brief, which is this: 5 minutes to cover off what they do in their day-to-day job, their perspective on the world in the light of COVID, and how they see that as resulting in any solutions to tackling climate change. Obviously, there's a lot of parallels there which we can discuss. So without further ado, I'm now going to pass to Farzad. Farzad, I'm putting a timer on for your 5 minutes. Go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Just to verify everyone can hear me okay? Thumbs up? Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Farzad Sunavala. I am currently a software engineer at Chevron Corporation. So yes, I know just a year ago today when I said climate change, working for oil and gas energy company, you have no idea how many boos and nods, but anyways, I am very passionate about this topic. I am from Houston, Texas. Lived here now for the majority of my life. Very passionate about climate change. And the majority of my time in my day job, I do spend developing digital technologies to enable climate change for the energy industry. So I'm glad to contribute to digital innovation for the energy industry and helping oil and gas operating companies invest into renewable technology. So I guess I'll quickly go into how has COVID-19 affected my personal life. So really it's come down to two main factors. That's going to be really fear and uncertainty. It's greatly impacted my personal and professional life. I'll kind of combine both. I've seen the physical effects on those infected and the mental trauma and the fear which people face. It's really, really sad. The fear of not knowing when the pandemic is going to end, or am I safe to go outside and hang out with my friends? And how everything is going to play out in terms of economical, physical, mental well-being. It's definitely played a significant impact on my life, and even more so in the professional world. Within only a few months, COVID-19 has provoked a massive demand shock across the entire globe. Setting off job losses that far exceed the scale of the Great Recession, a decade ago. I read this morning, actually, that global unemployment might actually reach 250 million people, and that's really staggering. And to compound the fact, for those of you who keep I am the energy industry, and the price of oil took a significant hit due to the lack of demand and oversupply. And so there's a lot of my friends and colleagues whose jobs are in jeopardy, and they're struggling to provide means for themselves and their family. So pretty much, how can climate change really play a role in all of this? So what has COVID-19 done for the economy? We see a decline in consumption, restrictions on movement from government-enforced lockdowns, social distancing. There's a whole erosion of wealth due to the fall in the value of the U.S., not just the U.S. but global economy. Decline in investment, uncertainty sparks it discourages forward decision making. Decline in net exports. We look at disruption in supply chain across the globe, border closure due to non-essential trade, limited markets. And so I'll kind of wrap it up real quick with what advice do I have to the audience today to help fight climate change, given this environment that we're in. So together, as we do get through this pandemic and fight for a new, ever cleaner energy, green economy, and we got to get rid of the mindset that there's unlimited economic development in this world with the number of finite resources we have, because it just doesn't make sense. And the way we can address climate change together through this pandemic is, by spreading awareness, talking to our friends, our family, our colleagues, regardless of the social status you're in. If you're just an engineer like me, if you're a politician, if you're a lawyer, if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter. The real change in the world will start when we start enforcing our policymakers to enforce the climate change initiatives that's been going on. And I'll conclude it with real quick what we can do as a small religious community together to fight climate change and for systematic change. And I'll throw the question back to everyone right now. I'm Mazi asking our history. What is our faith all about? It's about ensuring the integrity of our creation. I'm gonna give a shout out to Dr. Dolly Destor. She sent a video, which I'll post in the chat later, that really sparked how faith really has a direct correlation in preserving our earth and preserving the environment. And so what is our faith all about? It's about ensuring the integrity of our creation. What is creation? Creation is nature. It's up to us, the leaders of the community and a religion, to enforce to people that people are not separate from nature. They are a part of nature. It's their responsibility to protect nature as they protect themselves. So I'll end it with a quote. Don't ever let a good crisis go to waste, as Winston Churchill said. So coming out of this, I encourage myself, all of you today who are listening, come out with an idea, come out with innovation, come out with awareness, going outside of this pandemic. And I really want to inspire all of you to make a difference. Grandkids, your kids, great grandkids, your kids, not just have an equal lifestyle that we've been preserving, or have a better lifestyle. So what can we all do together to better ourselves, better the economy, better our Karl, appreciate it.
Fantastic, thanks Farzad. Really interesting to hear that perspective from the energy sector. You wouldn't think you'd hear someone in the energy sector talking about systemic change, but that's really great to see. And I really like the way you're talking about how we can reimagine our economies coming out of this crisis. So thanks for that perspective. Now we're going to throw to Hanoz, who's going to provide us with a bit more perspective on how COVID's impacted on our carbon emissions. Hanoz, 5 minutes, take it away.
All right, wave if you can hear me. Okay, good. So I'm gonna just briefly go over how COVID-19 has impacted carbon emissions. Now, when the virus first started spreading in China, people thought it was going to be a relatively minor thing. And at some point in March, it just started growing exponentially. And the first reaction that people had was, let's just shut everything down. That was sort of the gut reaction that a lot of countries and a lot of companies had. So things got shut down, and the immediate impact, the short-term impact, was a huge decrease in pollution of all types. Air pollution, water pollution, carbon emissions, everything just went down because factories shut down, air travel shut down, people were under stay-at-home orders, so they stopped driving, they stopped going on vacation, business travel shut down. In the short run, there was just a huge drop. But the question is, what's going to happen afterwards? What's going to happen once this passes? Are we going to go back to normal, or are we going to maintain some of the changes that we've made without disrupting future progress? So that's what I want to comment a little bit on. Now, there have been some positives and some negatives. The main positives have been in industry and transportation. Transportation, of course, has been cut significantly. I think right now airlines are operating at like 20-30% of their usual number of flights. So that's a significant drop. About 20% of greenhouse gases are due to transportation. So when you cut out a lot of flights and a lot of cars, that reduces it substantially, and also in industry. If factories shut down, you see a huge decrease. Other sectors have not been impacted so much. For example, agriculture has not really changed much. People still need to eat. So agriculture is still going as it was before. There have been some other positive impacts. I read an article about how in India, they are finding turtles on beaches where they were never found before. But the people are not going to the beaches, and so nature is reclaiming has gone up. And the reason is because people are saying, hey, the government is preoccupied with other things right now, let's take advantage of it. Overall, where are we going in the future? There's going to be an economic rebound at some point. We don't know when exactly. We don't know whether it's going to be sharp or gradual, but this is going to pass. So I would like to mention a few things that we can maintain. One is telecommuting. Many people are now working from home, and companies are realizing that it's not as bad as they expected. Workers are much more productive than they thought. And so maybe this is something that can stick around. If more workers can work from home, there's going to be less cars on the road, less pollution, less stress from commuting, all of that. So if that is one long-term impact, then I think that could significantly reduce greenhouse emissions going forward. I know I'm almost out of time. I'll just mention one other thing. I think that COVID-19 has changed the mindset of people. It's refocused them on what really matters. And what matters is not infinite economic growth. It's not more and more money. It's not globalization and making larger and larger companies. What matters is connecting with people and being with the people that you know and love, and taking care of the earth that we live in. And so I think the forced stay at home has, in a sense, refocused some people on the important things. And I hope that that can continue. And I hope that even after all of this ends and everything's back to normal, people remember that. So if we can do that, then I think that there should be a long-term decrease in carbon emissions. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Hanoz. Thanks for that perspective. Wholeheartedly agree. It's allowed us to kind of reprioritize our value system. And I think humans are very forgetful. After the financial crisis, we saw a big drop in emissions. Then there was a massive spike soon after when we started pumping a lot of money into fossil fuels. So we don't want to create the same mistakes as last time. Now we're going to hear from Rihanna, who is a student at University of Redlands. Rihanna, your time starts now.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our amazing panel. So I'm a little bit of a different perspective since I am actually, not in the environmental industry yet. I am still a student, so I'm still learning about all of these things every single day. So it's just a different perspective. So I wanted to talk about what COVID kind of did to me and kind of just the student body as a whole. Because I feel like I can speak for every student when I say that COVID really took a toll on all of us. Like Farzad was saying, he was, the emotional and the mental capability of what's going on was really crazy when every school was just decided to completely shut down right in the middle of a school year. Thankfully for me at my university, I actually didn't have as long as of a time doing online classes because just how my university was, I only had about a couple weeks for doing online, but it was still just a complete 180 of everyone just completely leaving, going home and learning online. And as an environmental science student, and especially the research that I'm doing, it is incredibly difficult to learn and to research and to go out into the world when the entire world is saying, okay, let's completely shut down. It's been very hard to go from going to national parks and doing geologic reviews to, looking at stuff online and saying, look at these graphs and look at these charts. It's very different. For me, I'm a very hands-on type of person. So to go from doing field work to coming to a classroom that's online was devastating to me personally and to a lot of my classmates. And it was really hard. But I was gonna, like what Hanoz was saying, due to, low carbon emissions and not going outside, you could actually appreciate nature way more in your backyard or going outside. In California especially, and even all over the world, you can see that there have been small changes. Like Hanoz was saying, there have been turtles shown up in India. There have even been dolphins that are showing up. I have been noticing just more wildlife in general. You can see it all around you. You can hear so many birds in the morning over here. I get woken up by them all the time. And it's also been kind of nice to, I guess, step away from what you're normally doing to something else to cope with the whole COVID-19 situation. For example, my sister and I go on walks all the time, and we notice she's like, what's that bird? Because I took a bird class. She's like, what's that bird? And I can identify it. Or like, what is this weird plant? And I'm like, let me find out. And it's been really fun to just kind of go out and see a different perspective, even in just your own neighborhood, because you don't really do that in your, going on to day-to-day life. It's really interesting to kind of see and do that. And another fun thing, of course, being an environmentalist and doing everything like that, you do appreciate the really small things about, why I love this earth so much, or even why everyone should love the earth as much as we do. And going out and doing more fun things. I've been trying to go on more hikes as of recently, and you just gotta explore and just see what's around in your backyard, because people just don't appreciate it in this very busy and ongoing lifestyle. So what I guess my takeaway from all of this is, this COVID-19 pandemic has been, crazy. It's, driving me a little insane. I wish I could go out and, see more of my friends and, do fun activities, but at the same time, it's been really great to kind of step back from that crazy lifestyle and just kind of, you know, take a look around you and just absorb all that fresh oxygen that we do have for right now until everything opens up again and carbon emissions go right back up.
Thanks, Rihanna. Thanks for that perspective. Really good to hear that you're enjoying life in California and all the natural beauty that's available there. I really like how you found you kind of reconnected with nature, which you maybe wouldn't have appreciated pre-lockdown. So really interesting to hear that perspective. Our fourth and final speaker is Shahan. And as his last name suggests, he is an engineer. So he's going to give us an engineer's perspective on the COVID crisis. Over to you, Shahan.
Small correction, I'm not actually an engineer, but
no,
no, yeah, that's a confusing part. But other than that, I'll talk about small and medium businesses right now and how to support small stuff during COVID. So I'm an energy efficiency intern, and I design rebate programs for various kinds of sectors in the electricity market, right? So there'll be large buildings or small businesses. I need to cater to different kinds of sectors. Now, most of us know that businesses of all types have been hit by COVID, especially small and medium businesses. There are businesses that are going out of business, they're struggling to keep afloat, people are losing their jobs. And through my program design work, I've been trying to tweak or try to enhance my program and make incentives more lucrative, right? Try and bring back business up again. And from the feedback I've garnered from various customers and just the industry as a whole, everyone's struggling, right? So my key takeaway is support small businesses rather than big corporations. Try and support local, try and support sustainable stuff. In the environmental world, there's two approaches on how to approach environmental issues or just issues in general. There's a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. And at a grassroots level, that's the bottom-up approach, whereby we as humans, as individuals, take our own problems and matters into our own hands and try to make things better. So for example, the smallest of things, rather than using a plastic bag at a grocery store, use a cloth bag. That's a small thing. That's a small change you can make on your own. Eat less meat. Do you need a car? No. Sell your car, bike if you have to, or rent a car when you have to. So small things on a grassroots level really makes a difference. And that's what I've been able to take away from the COVID crisis.
Fantastic, Shahan. Thanks for those daily tips. That's really helpful because we need to relate this back to our day-to-day lives. That brings us to the end of the panel presentations. Now, I would like to have some questions coming through in the chat box. So I'm sure you have them whirring away in your head. Please do throw down any questions you have for the panel in the chat box. And as you're thinking of them, I'm just going to pass the mic to Parshan now.
Thank you. Thank you, Karl. Yeah, feel free to have those questions coming in, folks. While we are waiting for questions to trickle in, I want to give two shout outs. One is to Alfred Mystery to talk to us about the UN NGOs efforts and how folks can get involved with that. So Alfred, would you like to give us a quick conversation about that?
Thanks, Pashan. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Afreed Mystery, and I'm currently the FEZANA representative to the United Nations. Baram Pastakia and I co-chair the FEZANA UN NGO committee, and we're always on a lookout for especially youth or even adults who would like to attend events and conferences at the UN and who are capable of maybe doing presentations at the UN or do proper articles or sort of things that we can put out in the media that FEZANA is doing to help with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, one of them being climate change. And we've had a really great success. We've had close to 90 people all over the world represent FEZANA at the United Nations since 1997, when we got our NGO status with the United Nations. We also went, well, Mayor Sidhwa Pastakia from India was our representative to the climate change conference in Paris, France in November of 2015. And Mayor actually works on clean energy projects in India. And currently she works on solar energy projects throughout India. And so she's been really successful in representing us at the UN and actually doing this in her daily life. So if anyone is interested, I'll drop my email in the chat and you can contact me.
Thank you so much, Afri. Please go ahead and put your email in the chat. And for folks who are interested, we will also have this information online in the FEZANA website so that you can get in touch with folks and get involved. And before we go ahead and get to questions, I see a couple of questions coming up. I do want to give one more shout out to somebody I just saw joining us earlier in the participants, which is Dr. Sarushian. And, Dr. Sarushian is the director of the Center for Hydrometeorology and Remote Sensing, as well as Distinguished Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering and Earth System at UC Irvine. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Dr. Sarushian back when I was a student at UC Irvine. I don't know if he recalls, but we had him back in 2014 come and do a talk about environmental sustainability and climate change. And it's just so awesome to see Dr. Sarushian joining us. So I want to say thank you. We all look forward to continuing your footpaths and doing the great work.
Thank you so much for acknowledging me. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Wonderful panel, and I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarushian. Appreciate you. And so I'm going to pass it back to Karl if you want to go over, circulate the questions. And also, once again, Dr. Sarushian, feel free to share any words of wisdom that you have as well. We'll appreciate you.
Thanks, Parshan. So good to know that we already have some activities and initiatives in place in the Zoroastrian community to try and advance our efforts against climate change. Now we will throw to questions. We have about half an hour where we can have an open discussion and forum. It'd be great if we can see some of your faces. So we can see some of you have your cameras on. We have about 48 participants. If you're willing, please do share your webcam, and then let's, great to see some more faces. Let's get a conversation happening. So I have a question that's come in here from Zed Aspandiar. This is for the whole panel, really. What types of policies should we be supporting to reduce the CO2 emissions produced by different industries? To make a lasting difference, we need to look beyond our daily lives and advocate for systemic change. Anyone on the panel want to try and tackle that one?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. I think regarding industries, it's the way we manufacture stuff and the materials we use. There'll be certain kinds of materials, especially plastics in general, which aren't the best in terms of packaging, for example, right? So the more we lobby against non-environmentally friendly materials and production techniques, the greater the change we can make. So for example, rather than using plastic, we can maybe use alternate sources, for example, cornstarch based or fiber based or other kinds of alternatives are coming up right now for packaging. That can be one thing we can try and do. In terms of industrial waste, especially in third world countries like Pakistan and India, lots of industrial waste goes unchecked. They go into seas, they go into mangroves, they go all over the country, right? Wherever they can. And the best way to curb that is by activism, by raising awareness about what we do. Just simple purchases we make can make a huge difference. So the more we are aware about certain things, the more we are active in society and try to engage awareness, the better it is for everyone else, and we can make change like that. That's how I believe it.
Karl?
Porus.
Yes, may
Thanks
I
for
add
that
something
response,
to this?
Shahan.
Yes.
Sure, Porus, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, when engineers and scientists look at all these issues, we need to look at it more objectively and not get onto any bandwagon. And I just want to caution for any unintended consequences. For example, in developing countries like India and China and other places, if suppose today government decides that everybody has to have an electric vehicle, because that's going to cut down carbon emissions from vehicles. There are studies that suggest that by doing that, there will be 25% increase in carbon footprint in countries like India, simply because if everybody charges their electric cars using electricity from the sources, and most of the sources are coal-fired power plants, the power plants will have to run extra. So one needs to worry about all aspects of this whole renewable energy, and not just looking at only one aspect. Second point that I would like to make is, I'd already posed a question, but I thought I'll kind of mention the question here and then throw it to the panel to give me a response. All the renewable energy sources, they use non-renewable materials. For example, all the power plants, all the electric wind turbines and everything is made up of copper and permanent magnets and all that stuff for generators. Go look at the studies on how much copper is left in the mines. So you might find that probably you might have more years of fossil fuels available than copper in the copper mines kind of stuff. So there are all these aspects that one needs to look at objectively in order to come up with a more conclusive answer. And right now, I don't think so anybody has a conclusive answer. Yes, everybody is jumping on one political or idealistic bandwagon versus the other. I'll shut up now.
Thanks for those insights, Boris. Can I pick that question up before I throw to Farzad? I guess, yeah, you raise a really interesting point. That is the fact that they're currently living very unsustainable lives, and we can't continue using as much energy as we're currently using and expect us to solve all the problems. Effectively, we need to reduce our energy consumption massively and then ensure that's supplied by renewables. So there's been some studies done here in the UK around actually how long does a solar panel or a solar PV farm need to run before it offsets all the embodied carbon that's required in manufacture, and that's about 10 years. But like you're saying, if we just roll out massive amounts of renewables or electric vehicles in the world, it's still going to be a lot of embodied carbon that's going to be released into the atmosphere. Farzad, I wonder, do you want to jump in on this question around
and one needs to worry about the recycling of solar panels once they start dying. Where are you going to put them? So you don't want to end up with the same problem that we have with plastics right now, because few decades ago, plastic was the best gift to mankind. Now it's a curse. So.
Exactly right. Farzad, I wonder, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I'll briefly just touch on it. So exactly to your point, I even pulled up a quote here when I was going through the OGCI, Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, and from the World Energy Outlook. I mean, precisely to your point, for oil and gas is going to be approximately 48% of the world energy mix in 2040. In my humble opinion, that's still kind of a more on the conservative estimates. I'd say that's probably a P10. And so to your point exactly, I mean, it's really going to be the emerging technology on what is going to be prevalent in the future to talk about reducing CO2 emissions, biofuel consumption, water waste management. So we talk about recycling, we talk about, exactly, you gave a perfect example with the plastics. Are we just going to doom ourselves to, just exchanging a product from plastic water bottles, and now the problem is going to be recycling solar panels? So in order to avoid that cycle or that loop, it's really just going to come down to the digital innovation of emerging technologies and how we can further avoid that that potentially catastrophic scenario of just repeating the loop that we've already been through. So some examples will quickly shout out that what the energy climate is doing is my company in particular, we've actually established 4 goals. So 5 to 10% lower greenhouse gas intensity, 2 to 5% lower net greenhouse gas net intensity, 25% lower flaring. And so as to Karl's point, to conclude, it's all this little reduction that will eventually see exponential gains in preserving our planet. But to your point, for our generation, probably the next generation, the fossil fuel industry is still going to be the primary source of energy precisely because of its dependency on raw materials and whatnot. So good point.
Thanks for that response, Farzad. Dr. Sarushan, I see you have your hand up. I wonder, would you like to unmute and share your perspective with us?
Sure, thank you so much. Coming back to your question, I think already some people who reflected on this, your question about what can be done. I think we have to go where science directs us. And in that context, maybe some of you have heard of IPCC, which stands for Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. They're at the tail end of their 6th assessment, which they do every 5 years. And the executive summary of that report is always a very good source of objective, unbiased, non-political reflection of what really is the state of climate and how we could probably contribute to it. So I would leave it with that.
Thanks, Doctor. So I see we have another question here from Farah. Doctor, I think great if we can have you unmute and ask your question to the panel. Farah, would you like to go ahead, unmute and ask your question?
Since it's Bum and Maina right now and many Zoroastrians practice being vegetarian this month, what are the other eco-practices that the Zoroastrian religion promotes that we can take on to prevent a climate change crisis in our future? Thanks.
Great question. Who'd like to tackle that? Hanoz, I know you have some experience in this. Would you like to have a go?
Sure. So I think that there are two approaches to protecting the environment. I think somebody mentioned the top-down and the bottom-up approach. So this question seems to be asking about the bottom-up approach. What can we do personally? Of course, reducing meat consumption is big because meat is responsible for a lot of greenhouse gases. Other things would be driving a fuel-efficient car or using public transportation whenever possible, carpooling if possible, not using disposable plastics unless necessary. You know, don't buy plastic water bottles, use a reusable water bottle, reusable shopping bags. All of these are things that we can do. One interesting thing about the Zoroastrian religion is the Dokminashini practice, where we don't cremate bodies or bury bodies. Traditionally, at least in India and also in Iran, they were left to be disposed of by nature, by the vultures, and that is much more environmentally friendly. So that's another thing that our religion specifically promotes. But overall, I think just being conscious of your impact. You know, very small things like turn out the lights when you're not in the room, or shut off the AC when you're not home. Even minor things like that, when you add them up over millions of people, it can have a big impact.
My fear is what's going to happen when the vultures go extinct.
Yeah, that's a pressing question for several decades. In Bombay, they are looking at some breeding programs and things like that. I don't know what the status is exactly, but there are people working on that.
I'd like to add on to that actually, as we as Parsis or Zoroastrians in general have actually done, the best answer is to adapt. So rather than use our old efficient but archaic practices of the Dakma system, there's much more better alternatives in today's time. And something which isn't a good practice for like disposing of bodies is actually cremation. Cremation is cleaner than normal burials, but cremations is bad in terms of energy consumption, mercury emissions, and quite a few other things. So as I mentioned, the best thing to do would be simple. So simple burial would be the best option. Burying yourself in a shroud, not using too many materials in the burial process. That's the best way to try and be eco-friendly when it comes to burials. So yeah, that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, that's
Thanks, Shahan.
a good way to adapt, I think. It's the best philosophy?
Thanks, Shahan. I think you're the expert in
Karl.
this field because you've written a paper on this, I believe, as well.
Yep, I did.
Farzad, you want to come in?
Yeah, one quick sentence. I think this is going to spark some really interesting discussion on top of our question. So back to my shout out earlier, I gave Dr. Dolly Dastoor on the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative. I actually found out that protecting tropical rainforests can actually prevent coronaviruses and other emerging diseases from happening. Now, it's a very bold statement, and I'm by no means a medical professional or anywhere even close to that, but I am a man of data and data science and statistics. And it clearly establishes that animal to human pathogenic transfers are increasing as we make incursions into the rainforest and have contact with animals. You know, many such as Ebola, SARS, COVID-19, where did these all come from? These all had animal origins. And the more we consume and invade the natural habitat who live in the forest, the more likely that pathogenic transfers are going to take place. And so my challenge to everybody is, you know, as this pandemic has had a profound effect on the economy, it's dialogues like these that we're having right now. And I hope Arzan and FEZANA team, I hope we have a lot more of these. I'm really looking forward to the ones later this week. I hope that we can have more talks to spark this dialogue upon faith communities worldwide to step forward and raise awareness and demand that the only way to really, you know, get down this root cause is by enforcing policymakers to invest in people and in nature rather than repeat these unsustainable patterns. And, you know, and in particular, we'll advocate for climate change as a disease protection priority. And so we all want to go out and have fun. Let's do what we can to, you know, for the future. So, yeah, just thought I'd add on to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Farzad. Great additions there. And a lot more coming through in the chat here as well. Ideas to grow more trees, cut the water when you're shaving or brushing your teeth. Great suggestions here. What I'd like to do now, before people start dropping off, we have another 15 minutes left. But what I'd like to do is we just want to take a screenshot so we can post on social media and get more people involved in these webinars. So if I can get everyone who has their video on to give us a nice big wave and a smile, we'll take a screenshot. I'm trying to think you're going to take a screenshot. Everyone's coming online. I've taken a couple of screenshots as well.
Yeah, one more, y'all. Keep it on.
Get the done sock, Harshawn. Make sure you get the done sock.
Yeah, I'll do that. 1 second. One more. Ready? 3, 2, 1. There we go. We're good, y'all. Thank you.
Good one. Big smiles all around. Good to see that. So still looking for more questions to come through. Whilst you guys are dropping them in the chat box, we do have another 10 or so minutes left. I have one for the panel. This could be quite a controversial one. It's for the Americans here today. Who should you vote for in the November elections if you're passionate about climate change? Rihanna, I see you're about to jump out of your seat. Would you like to
Oh no.
have a first stab at that?
Well, for a lot of US policies, if you are more right-winged, you will definitely not see a change in anything to do with climate change or anything to do with the environment. But if you are more on the left-wing side, then you will get policies and you will hopefully be voting for people in office who would be able to, you know, help with policies that help out with the environment. Because in our current administration, you know, they're very big into the fossil fuel administrations and really big into oil industry. Sorry, Farzad, not to attack you or anything like that, but, you know, they're really going for that. They're finding, you know, more places to get oil. They're going into really endangered species' land, and they've cut the EPA budget into, I can't even tell you, it's almost non-existent at this point. The EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, if people were not aware of that. So if people in America would vote for you more left-winged politicians, even not just federal, it can even be in the state itself, in your local communities. You should vote for people who are more on the left-handed side who will be able to help in your community. If you think your community is doing really bad in recycling programs, speak out and tell them that they need to do more recycling programs. Tell them that they need to clean up their trails, their streets. If you live, anywhere in a really big city, contact those people because they would be able to set up policies that would help out even in your local community. I'm talking about local and even the entire United States itself. So please vote blue and not red, among other things, but we will not get into that. This is not the panel.
Karl, could I say
Anyone
something?
else feel bold enough to jump in on that? Go ahead, Edel.
Yeah. Irrespective of politics and irrespective of policies, there's lots of things that we can do ourselves. And these solutions obviously need creativity, innovation, and we have to be sustainable in whatever we do. I think it's a perfect opportunity for potential entrepreneurs to really do something about it, and rather than just talk about it, get into some business, get into some opportunity and impact the environment, in the right way. And if a lot of entrepreneurs did that, I think in small incremental steps, we'll make at least some impact,
Yeah, so I think it's going to require all sectors of society to really step up, businesses, government, humans, individuals, etc. Hanoz, I wondered, did you have anything to add on to this?
Sure. So, I don't want to get into politics, but one thing I've noticed is that politicians are very opportunistic. They tend to support something if it fits with their agenda, and that agenda can change very quickly. So, as a general rule, as Rihanna said, certain politicians are into certain things and other politicians are into other things. But what I would like to say is we shouldn't trust the politicians, regardless of who's in office and regardless of what their political views are. We have to be doing our part locally to protect the environment, and we have to have this bottom-up approach, because trusting the politicians is not going to get anything done, regardless of who the politicians are. So I would like to remind everyone about that. Voting is one thing, but doing it yourself is what has real power.
Strongly agree.
That's a really nice sentiment, Hanoz. So it seems like the questions aren't really coming through. If you do have any final questions, please submit them. One thing that Farzad picked up on, which I would like to ask and all of you on the call today, is how do we keep this conversation live? We had a presentation a year ago. This is fantastic that we can now, 50 of us, gather and discuss this more broadly. But how do we as a Zoroastrian community keep this conversation live? Any suggestions from you all? Edel, I know you're involved in WZCC. I wonder, is there something that the Chamber of Commerce?
But definitely. We are always encouraging people to think about entrepreneurship and get into it. And this is a perfect area of opportunity. And and the timing is, I also think, is perfect. When things are slow and you're you got some idle time to think about things, plan out. That's the starting point for a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. So everyone, even at least think about it or consider it. It's not necessarily for every single person, but it should be constantly thought about.
Yeah, having those conversations, keeping it live. Totally agree, Edel, and you're right. This is the time to act. This is the time where we can kind of reconfigure our mindsets, how we approach business, our lifestyles, etc.
Right.
We're now at about 5:02, so I think it's about time to wrap things up. I'm going to throw back to Pashan, but before I do so, thanks to the panelists for coming online today and sharing your views, really insightful. And I will now, and also thanks to you all, 50 of you all, for taking the time out to join. Really good to have you all here. Pashan, I'll pass over to you now. Pashan's just unmuting.
Sorry. Yep. Thank you, everybody. This was now I think we're coming to the end of our first talk. Just as a note to stay tuned for the next two talks. So tomorrow we're gonna have a redo of our Boss Ladies panel. You can find the link to that panel on the FEZANA talk series. And so, you know, and then later, the day after that, we'll do another panel, where we'll talk about the impact of COVID-19 in our community and also what the future of efforts to support youth during these times and beyond will look like. So with that, and, you know, I encourage everybody here today to join us for the future panels. And I want to thank you all for joining us in this amazing first attempt at the FEZANA Talk series. And yep, if anyone else wants to have any last minute thoughts, feel free to share. And otherwise, we appreciate you all for joining us.
Yeah, it seems like some people would like to continue the discussion whilst we're all here right now. For those that have other engagements, feel free to drop off. But if you would like to continue the discussion, feel free to unmute yourself, throw a question at the panel. Let's see where we can take it.
I have a question for Farzad. When you talked about recycling, do you have any idea as to how the disposable gloves and masks can be recycled? Because we see so many people just dumping them in the garbage.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. Particularly in the scope of work that I do, I can't speak to the technicalities of the process of recycling disposable gloves, but that definitely is a problem. I completely concur with you, especially in cities like where I am, where recycling probably isn't as prominent as in, you know, other cities around the globe. That's definitely a valid point to bring up. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to technicalities from an energy perspective and the value chain of how we can recycle that and then the processes behind that particular commodity, that particular product. But very valid point.
Is there some Zoroastrian youth or entrepreneur who wants to start saying, okay, collect them and drop them off at the OZCF and we will dispose them off for you in a proper manner? I don't know how it is, because I go to India every winter, and even I was stuck in India during the pandemic. I only came back on May 14th, and I saw that although people were recycling, they would pick up the recycled material and throw it in the garbage. So it wasn't really helping. I don't know if it was happening all over. I lived in Andheri, Bandra, and Karl, and only place that I saw it happening was at Godrej Bagh. People in Bombay may know that they have these big bins and they have started actual recycling in Godrej Bagh. But I'm just wondering if we can, the Bombay youth can do something, because I know they do with vessels, they do with shoes, they do with recycled books and newspapers. Can they do something about this in Bombay?
Can I pick up on this real quick?
Sure.
So I think due to the COVID-19 pandemic as of right now, the best thing you can actually do, unfortunately, with these gloves and masks, the only way to dispose of them properly is to just throw them in the trash. You actually can't really do much with the recycled material. The problem is a lot of people, I'm just talking about in the state of California, what I've been seeing, the most irresponsible thing that you are doing is actually not throwing away your gloves or your mask properly in a trash can. I've seen gloves in parking lots just thrown, you know, after they take them off, they're thrown, or masks just being disposed. That's the, you know, complete opposite of what we're trying to do. So unfortunately, even though these materials are harmful to the planet, the only way to dispose of them correctly is to just throw them away. And that's, unfortunately, is of course not environmentally friendly, but at the moment, because of the whole pandemic, it's actually the safest thing to do right now, is to just throw them away. You can't really properly recycle things that can only be used once. It's for safety reasons, but you know, like I said, environmentally it's terrible, but we have to just throw them in the trash. There's no real way to recycle things that could, you know, cause harm to others. That's the only unfortunate thing about this whole thing.
Karl, can I say something? Karl?
Sure, Dolly, go ahead.
Somebody had mentioned that how should we move forward on this panel, which is excellent what has been done, and I think we'd like to congratulate the FEZANA for doing this, that our religion is supposed to be the most ecological religion. And so if we keep talking of this and presenting it and writing about it, so that more and more people get to know about it, so that we get into the EPAs and we get into the different panels and we get into the different places where we could make some difference in the thinking of the people and change the mindsets, because and promoting the religion and the values of the religion. So that's what one of my comments is. That's how we could move forward, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. We have representation at the UN. We have 2 academics here in Hanoz and Rihanna. So the more we can get our name out there as proponents for environmentalism, the better we're going to help the cause. So yeah, wholeheartedly agree with you there.
Can I just add a little on recycling?
Sure, Hanoz.
So part of the problem with recycling is that in many cases, it actually takes more energy to recycle something than to make it from raw materials. And this is very dependent on what the material is. For example, aluminum can be recycled very efficiently. Aluminum, recycling it is definitely beneficial for the environment, but for certain things like plastic or cloth, it can be less clear, especially if you have, for example, masks are often made of cloth. You have a small piece of cloth, it's very difficult to recycle in the traditional sense. So what usually happens is the cloth gets shredded and it gets used for, you know, filling or padding or insulation or something like that. Same with plastic. Plastic, there are so many different types of plastic that it's difficult to sort them and recycle them. So I want to remind everyone, focus on reuse and reduce first. There's the 3 R's, recycle, reduce, reuse, but actually the order goes first reduce, means make less trash, then reuse, and finally, if neither of those is possible, then recycle. So that's kind of the hierarchy. Recycling is the last resort. I know, unfortunately, many people fall into the trap of thinking, well, I can recycle it, it's fine, it's not a problem. And that's not really the right approach. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Hanoz. I mean, if you can take a reusable bag to your shopping center, if you can take a container to your grocery store and fill that up with your groceries rather than having to buy single-use plastics, that's the ideal. I know that's probably harder to do in the States, but wherever there is a store that might offer package-free groceries, that's where you should go, because that's making sure that your decisions as a consumer is promoting more package-free shopping and grocery options.
And it's the same with masks. Buy a reusable mask and wash it out instead of buying disposable ones and throwing them away every day.
Also, quick, guys, I do have to log off. I have to head to work, but I just want to say thank you. This was really fun. I hope we get to do more of these soon.
Bye, Rihanna.
Thanks, Rihanna. Have a good day.
I just want to say something about what Hanoz said, that I know we all feel very happy. Oh my God, I am recycling. but you're right. You should not, like I keep telling, I'm also a Girl Guide leader. I keep telling them, don't buy those reusable bottles. You bring them to camp, you're not a Girl Guide. I need you to bring a recycled, like a bottle that you can fill up and reuse all the time. We provide them with soap and bleach and whatever else to wash it, especially when we have 10, 15-day long camps. So I think it should start with the reduce thing. And where it is not possible to reduce, like I'm teaching my Girl Guides how to make milk bag mats out of milk bag outer covering of the 4 liters thing that we get in, which I believe takes 25 years to disintegrate. So we reuse and upcycle them. So maybe that could also be something that we can teach through our panels.
That's I agree with you there, Armatian. Starting with our youth is critical. So great that you're instilling those values in the Girl Guides. So Arslan, did you want to come in here?
Water bottles at your congresses.
I think Arnaz had a very good point, about we have now 14, 15 Daremeres all over North America, and it would be interesting to see if any of these Daremeres actually have a recycling plan, for what they do. Like, we all meet up whenever we do, and we have these paper cups and plastic cups and spoons and just regular trash. So I know that the ZSO in Toronto had been looking at it because Afreed and I had spoken about it, and we had alluded a little bit to that at the Darimere over here in New York, but we haven't really put a plan together. I think if we did that, and if all of the Darimere shared their information, not only about where do you source all of this from, right? Where do you buy the right equipment or the materials or other things? That might be very good, and that we can actually then show that we are making a small impact, even if it is just one center at a time. Yeah, Roxy, go ahead.
So when I was youth coordinator for Zach last year, the previous term, I had suggested that we, one, build a compost in the Darimar Center, and the second thing that I had tried to implement as much as possible was we have a store here called Smart and Final, and they make plates, cups, spoons, forks, all of that disposable stuff out of sugarcane and bamboo, which are compostable as well. So I've had tried as much as possible to implement that we use those materials as opposed to paper, plastic, and especially not styrofoam, because that's the absolute worst. So that could be something that maybe like FEZANA could take as a full initiative, that we really try to push for the Darimers to use those during our functions as opposed to the paper and plastic, and to invest in a compost. It's not very expensive. It's actually quite doable, and you can use the compost to enrich the grounds where they grow flowers and trees. So that was just an idea that I had.
Yeah, I mean, a fantastic idea. Why don't we spread that out to the other Darimers in North America? Because we really need to be showing leadership. So I think that's a fantastic initiative you have there, Roxy. For our doctor, I think you had something to come in on?
Yeah, I agree with that, Roxanne. And I think that the reason why I asked the question about eco practices is because I find it fascinating that the Zoroastrian religion is so ancient, and yet the climate crisis is a very trending topic. And as a result of that, I want to sort of go back to kind of what we've all learned growing up and how the religion has evolved to understand these perspectives. Because I find, and what I'm trying to say is that, say when you go to a wedding and we eat on banana leaves, like that in itself is so sustainable. And instead of you're talking about paper plates and paper cups, but the whole tradition of parties is to eat on banana leaves in a lagan or an alga. Then we're talking about, like, even on the concept of sustainable fashion, you have a sadra, which is like so eco, and in its approach and the way that it's made. So I think if we take a step back and rather than sort of try and think of all the new ways that people try to be sustainable, we can just go back to our roots of what was always so sustainable back in the Persian land. So that I just wanted to sort of open the discussion on sustainable fashion, because I have found that during lockdown especially, I just wear the same clothes all the time, and you just do not need as much as we all need. And like that sort of consumer behavior is so problematic, and how consumer behavior is also so anti-Zoroastrian in the sense of it being about, you know, promoting recycling and hand-me-downs and all of those sort of Zoroastrian values. So just wanted to open the conversation on that.
Anyone who'd like to add to that? I think I agree with you, Farah. We just need to look back a couple of generations to see how we can live a much more sustainable, less impactful lifestyle. So we'll hardly agree. Armati, did you want to add something to that?
Well, I just wrote that I know that there are people who actually say, I don't want to wear last year's fashion, but they don't understand that actually in a few years, the fashion comes back. So don't throw away your clothes, reuse, reduce and recycle. At our Girl Guides, we had some speakers come and they were actually wearing recycled clothes. And they showed my girls who are 9 to 11, look, does this look as if it is from the 80s, 90s, 1985 or 1995? No, it looks like it's, and they had bought it or brought it from the recycled bins and from the thrift stores. I think Sir Jamsetji Jujuboy it was that made money out of Jaipura Unwalla things. We should, some youth should start that now, and Adel can doubt that call the people saying, become a Jaipura Unwalla now and you will make money.
Totally, like Zoroastrian fashion is in at the moment.
Yep. The garas and the saris and everything else.
Zoroastrian eco-fashion, a new line hitting your stores, hitting your high streets, fall 2020. Who's going to take that up?
Tops and like 2 pieces out of saris, that's very sustainable.
I actually got married to a South Indian, and according to their custom, for every single festival, they would give you a new sari. And I lived in Singapore after I got married, and I actually refused for them to send them to me, but they didn't listen. So I actually started returning them, brand new, and I would return them, and they would say, but it cost me 5,000 rupees, and 5,000 rupees in 1985, 87 was a lot of money. And I used to return them because I didn't think that I was able to wear them over there. I'm able to wear them even less in Toronto. So when I go for a Lagan and Navjot, even from my family, I tell them, don't give me a new sari, because everybody wants to give you a sari. I prefer to give the money to some charity, and my special charities are for the blind. So I always take that money and give it away. I think it should start with you as an individual. And like Afreed said, that they try to do recycling in ZSO. Number of times I put blue bags out telling people, because there is no recycling in the town of Oakville where our center is, the OZCF, nobody wants to recycle. So whenever I am there at an event, I pack up those bags, put them in my car and take them home, take them to the recycling, or just put it in my apartment building where I can actually put them in the recycling blue bins. So I think everybody should start doing their little bit. However little it is, it makes it into like a bigger thing.
That's really impressive, Amity. I think you should be you're our role model. You should be on the panel next time.
No,
I'd love to hear more from you.
No, I don't think so. But I know people get mad with me when I say all these things, and I don't care. I have a thick skin. Being a volunteer, you have to always have, like, you know, be able to shrug it off and say, okay, you can say what you want. I am agreeing to your opinion as long as it agrees with mine. So
yeah, but you're sticking to your guns and doing what's right, which is
absolutely
really admirable.
Absolutely.
Okay, everyone, I think we're 15 minutes over now, so probably time to wrap things up. Thanks a lot for the engaging discussion once again. Parshan, I wonder, do you want to say any final words before we close down the Zoom?
No, just that I'm looking forward to keeping these conversations going. This is only the beginning, and we definitely will keep having these engagements, having a lot more of these conversations, bringing different topics up. And so if you know or are interested in any particular topics that you want to see be featured in the FEZANA talks, let us know. And we will look forward to having you all tomorrow at the Boss Ladies panel.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone. Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
so much. Stay eco.
Bye.
Stay eco.
Eco-friendly.
Thank you. Everyone enjoy.